The message came at dawn on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in his office on Luna Base, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from here, but Jack knew that peace was about to end. The Zephyrian Empire had sent their final word. 3 human colonies must be given up, or Earth would burn. It was not a request. It was not even a threat. It was simply what would happen. Jack had fought aliens before, but never the Zephyrians. They were different from other enemies. They did not make mistakes. They did not show mercy. In 300 years of expansion across the galaxy, they had never lost a war. Every species that tried to fight them was either dead or serving as slaves. The door to his office opened. Ambassador Lisa Patterson walked in, her face pale but determined. She had just come from the emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Behind her came Colonel Frank Hayes, a man Jack had known for 20 years. Frank's eyes were hard, the look of a soldier who already knew what had to be done. "The council has made their choice," Lisa said. She sat down heavily in the chair across from Jack's desk. "They want to negotiate. They think we can find a peaceful solution." Jack nodded. He had expected this. Politicians always wanted to talk first. Sometimes talking worked. But the Zephyrians were not like other aliens. They did not negotiate from weakness, and they did not respect species they saw as inferior. "How long do we have?" Jack asked. "The talks will begin in 1 week," Lisa replied. "They want to meet at Harmony Point, the neutral station near the Centauri system." Frank spoke for the first time since entering the room. "And while the diplomats talk, what do we do? Sit and wait for them to decide our fate?" Jack looked at his old friend. Frank commanded the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. His men and women were trained for impossible missions. They were the sharp edge of human military power, used only when everything else had failed. "Tell me about Operation Silent." "Thunder," Jack said quietly. Frank glanced at Lisa, then back at Jack. "It's ready. We've been planning it for 6 months, ever since intelligence warned us the Zephyrians were looking our way. The strike teams are trained. The ships are prepared. We can hit them where they don't expect it, and our chances?" Jack asked. Frank was quiet for a long moment. "If we do nothing, we lose everything. If we fight, we might lose everything, but we might also win. The choice seems clear to me." Lisa leaned forward. "There has to be another way. War cannot be the only answer. The Zephyrians are reasonable beings. They must want something we can give them without sacrificing millions of innocent people." Jack had read the intelligence reports. He knew what the Zephyrians wanted. They wanted to make an example of humanity. They wanted every other species in the galaxy to see what happened to those who might think of resisting Zephyrian rule. This was not about territory or resources. This was about fear. The door chimed again. Captain Maria Santos entered, carrying a datapad. She was the best intelligence officer in the fleet, a woman who could find secrets where others saw nothing. "Admiral, we have a problem," Maria said. "The Zephyrian fleet movements don't match what they told us. They said they want 3 colonies, but they're positioning enough ships to destroy our entire outer rim." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Points of light appeared, showing the position of every known Zephyrian ship. There were more than anyone had thought possible. "They have over 500 capital ships moving toward human space," Maria continued. "That's not an occupation force, that's an extermination fleet." The room fell silent. 500 capital ships could destroy every human world beyond Earth itself. The colonies they claimed to want would be burned to ash along with everything else. "They never intended to negotiate," Frank said quietly. "This is all for show. They want us to spend time talking while they get into position to kill us all." Lisa stared at the display. Jack could see her mind working, trying to find some other explanation. She was a good diplomat because she believed people could always find common ground. But sometimes there was no common ground to be found. "We have to tell the council," she said finally. "Will they listen?" Jack asked. Lisa was quiet. The council wanted to believe negotiation could work. They would not want to hear that their enemies were lying to them. Jack made his decision. Frank, begin preparation for Operation Silent Thunder. Do it quietly, but do it fast. Maria, I want to know everything about that fleet. How they're supplied, how they communicate, what ships are commanding the others. What about the negotiations? Lisa asked. You'll go to Harmony Point as planned, Jack replied. You'll talk to them. You'll make them believe we're willing to give up those colonies. And while you do that, we'll prepare to hit them so hard, they'll never see it coming. Frank stood up. How long do I have? Jack looked at the display again. The Zephyrian ships were moving slowly, carefully. They thought they had all the time in the world. 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if Lisa can stretch out the talks. I can do that, Lisa said. She looked tired but determined. I'll make them think we're desperate to find a peaceful solution. I'll ask for time to consult with Earth. I'll request detailed terms. I'll drag it out as long as possible. Maria was studying her datapad. Admiral, there's something else. Our long-range sensors have detected ships moving toward the Sol system itself. Not many, but enough to blockade Earth if they wanted to. The pieces were falling into place. The Zephyrians would demand the colonies while moving ships to cut off Earth from any help. When the negotiations failed, as they were meant to fail, the human homeworld would be defenseless. They're smarter than we thought, Jack said. But maybe not as smart as they think they are. Frank was already moving toward the door. I'll have the strike teams ready in 48 hours. When do we move? When I give the word, Jack replied. And Frank, this has to work. If it doesn't, there won't be a second chance. After Frank and Maria left, Jack and Lisa sat in silence for a while. Through the window, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that its fate was being decided in the cold offices of Luna Base. Do you think we're making the right choice? Lisa asked. Jack thought about the 3 colonies the Zephyrians claimed. To want, New Boston had 2 million people. Terra Nova had 5 million. Harmony Colony had 800,000. All of them families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. I think we're making the only choice we have, he said finally. The Zephyrians want us to be afraid. They want us to give up without a fight? Maybe that's what other species did. But we're not other species, Lisa nodded. I'll do my part. I'll keep them talking for as long as possible. And I'll do mine, Jack replied. I'll make sure that when the talking stops, we're ready for what comes next. As Lisa left, Jack turned back to the window. Somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, the largest fleet in galactic history was moving toward human space. In a few days, humanity would discover if courage and determination were enough to face impossible odds. The war had not yet begun, but Jack Morrison knew it was already too late to stop it. All they could do now was choose how to fight it. Harmony Point Station hung in space like a metal flower, its 5 arms reaching out toward the stars. It was built to be neutral ground, a place where different species could meet without fear. Today, it would host the most important negotiations. In human history, Ambassador Lisa Patterson stood at the viewing port of the human transport ship as they approached the station. Beside her, Commander Steve Clark checked his equipment one more time. Steve was not a diplomat. He was a communications specialist, and his job was to listen to everything the Zephyrians said and find ways to hear what they were not saying. Remember, Lisa said quietly, we are desperate to avoid war. We are weak and frightened. We will do almost anything to keep our people safe. Steve nodded. And while you convince them of that, I'll be working on getting into their communications systems. If I can access their internal messages, we might learn what they're really planning. The human delegation was small. Just 12 people, including Lisa and Steve. The Zephyrians had brought over 40 representatives. The message was clear. This negotiation mattered to the humans. To the Zephyrians, it was barely worth their time. War Commander Thexaler was waiting in the main conference room when the humans arrived. He was tall even for a Zephyrian, with the silver markings that showed his high rank. His 4 arms moved in the complex patterns that served as body language for his species. Ambassador Patterson, he said in perfect English. The Zephyrians had studied human languages the same way they studied human weaknesses. I trust your journey was comfortable. Yes, thank you, Lisa replied. She made sure to sound slightly nervous, as if being in the same room with the Zephyrian war leader frightened her. We're grateful that you agreed to meet with us. The Xalar made a gesture that might have been amusement. Your gratitude is noted. Shall we begin? The first day of talks went exactly as Lisa had hoped. She asked for detailed explanations of Zephyrian terms. She requested time to consult with Earth before making any decisions. She raised concerns about the welfare of colonists who would be relocated. The Zephyrian commander grew visibly frustrated. His species was used to quick decisions and immediate action. The slow pace of human diplomacy clearly annoyed him. These delays serve no purpose, Xalar said during the afternoon session. Our terms are simple. You will evacuate the 3 colonies within 30 days. We will take control of those systems. This is not a complex matter. Lisa looked distressed. Commander, you must understand. These are not just territories to us. They are homes. Families have lived there for generations. We need time to arrange proper relocation, to find new places for these people to live. That is not our concern, the Xalar replied coldly. You have 30 days? Could we perhaps have 45 days? Lisa asked. Or could we discuss partial evacuation schedules? Maybe families with children could have extra time? While Lisa kept the Zephyrians busy with endless questions, Steve was working on his real mission. The conference room was full of electronic signals from both human and Zephyrian devices. Steve's equipment was designed to look like standard translation and recording gear, but it was actually attempting to break into alien communication networks. The breakthrough came on the second day. Steve found a way into the low-level maintenance systems on the Zephyrian ships. It was not much, but it was enough to start mapping their communication protocols. Back on Earth, General Patricia Brooks was coordinating the largest military preparation in human history. Every warship in the fleet was being moved into position. Weapons were being loaded. Soldiers were saying goodbye to their families, but this was not a normal military mobilization. The humans were not massing their forces for a traditional battle. Instead, they were spreading out, hiding, preparing for a type of warfare the Zephyrians had never faced. Patricia stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, hundreds of officers coordinated with human forces across the galaxy. On the main screen, she could see the positions of every human ship, every military base, every hidden weapons cache. Status report, she said to Colonel Roy Thompson, her chief of staff. All forces are in position, Roy replied. The merchant ships have been modified and are moving along normal trade routes. The Zephyrians think they're watching cargo haulers. They don't know those ships are carrying enough firepower to destroy a battlecruiser. This was the key to the human plan. The Zephyrians expected their enemies to fight like Zephyrians, with massive fleets meeting in open space. They were not prepared for an enemy that would use disguised cargo ships, hidden weapons platforms, and small fast attack craft working together. What about Operation Silent Thunder? Patricia asked. Colonel Hayes has his teams ready, Roy said. There are board ships that look like diplomatic couriers and medical transports. The Zephyrians will let them get close because they don't see them as threats. On Harmony Point, the negotiations continued. Lisa had stretched the talks into their 4th day by raising new concerns about environmental impact studies and cultural preservation rights. The Xalar was clearly losing patience. Ambassador Patterson, he said during the morning session, these delays are unacceptable. Your species will comply with our terms or face the consequences. I understand your frustration, Commander, Lisa replied, but surely you can appreciate that this is a difficult decision for our people. We are trying to find a way to satisfy your requirements while minimizing the suffering of our citizens. What the Zephyrians did not know was that every hour of delay gave the human military more time to prepare. Ships moved into position, weapons were loaded. Strike teams rehearsed their missions one more time. Steve finally achieved his major breakthrough on the 5th day. He managed to access the communication logs from the Zephyrian command ship. What he found confirmed their worst fears. During a break in the negotiations, Steve pulled Lisa aside. "I'm in their system," he whispered. "And you're not going to." "Like what I found." He showed her the data on his portable screen. The Zephyrians were not just planning to take 3 colonies. They were planning to destroy every human settlement beyond Earth itself. The negotiations were just a way to keep the humans distracted while the alien fleet moved into position. "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. 6 days until their main fleet reaches attack position, Steve replied. "Maybe 7 if they maintain." Current speed, Lisa felt her stomach drop. She had known the negotiations might fail, but she had hoped they were genuine. Now she knew the truth. The Zephyrians had never intended to honor any agreement. They planned to use the talks to position their forces, then launch a surprise attack that would wipe out human civilization in a single blow. "I need to contact Admiral Morrison," she said. "Not from here," Steve warned. "If they detect an unauthorized transmission, they'll know we've broken into their systems." Lisa nodded. She would have to wait until the day's session ended, then send a message from the human quarters using their secure communication system that evening. As the Zephyrian delegation relaxed in their section of the station, Lisa composed the most important message of her life. It was short and simple, using code words that would tell Admiral Morrison everything he needed to know. "The weather forecast has changed," she wrote. "Storm arrives in 6 days, not 2 weeks as expected. Suggest immediate preparations for all outdoor activities." She sent the message and sat back in her chair. Tomorrow she would return to the conference room and continue pretending to negotiate. She would ask more questions, raise more concerns, and buy as much time as she could, but now she knew the truth. While diplomats talked, the Zephyrian Empire was preparing to commit genocide. The only question was whether the human military would be ready in time to stop them. In 6 days, the largest fleet in galactic history would attack human space. Lisa could only hope that when the shooting started, humanity would be ready to shoot back. Steve was still working at his console, downloading as much intelligence as he could from the Zephyrian systems. "I'm getting their fleet positions," he sighed quietly. "Ship classes, weapons loadouts, supply lines. All of it." "Good," Lisa replied. "Make sure Admiral Morrison gets everything. If we're going to fight them, we need to know exactly what we're fighting against." Outside the station, the stars looked peaceful and eternal. But Lisa knew that peace was an illusion. In less than a week, those same stars would witness a battle that would determine whether humanity survived to see another generation. The talks would continue tomorrow. She would smile and ask questions and pretend to hope for a peaceful solution. But tonight, she would send everything Steve had learned to the human fleet. While diplomats talked, soldiers would prepare to strike. The fate of humanity would be decided not by words, but by courage, determination, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. Admiral Jack Morrison received Lisa's coded message at 0300 hours ship time. He read it twice, then called for an immediate meeting with his senior staff. The storm was coming 6 days early and humanity was not ready, but ready or not, they would have to fight. "Operation Silent Thunder begins in 18 hours, Jack announced to the assembled officers. "Colonel Hayes, are your teams prepared?" Frank Hayes stood at attention. Over the past week, his special forces had been positioned throughout Zephyrian space, disguised as medical ships, diplomatic couriers, and trade vessels. They had one mission: strike at the alien fleet's weakest points while their attention was focused on the main human worlds. "All teams are in position, sir," Frank replied. "We have strike groups near their supply depots, communication relays, and command stations. When we move, they'll lose their ability to coordinate their attack." Jack nodded. "Captain Thompson, what's the status of our modified merchant vessels?" Roy Thompson had spent the last 2 weeks turning ordinary cargo ships into hidden weapons platforms. From the outside, they looked like normal freighters carrying goods between human colonies. In reality, they were armed with military-grade weapons and crewed by Navy personnel. 47 ships ready, sir," Roy reported. They're scattered along normal shipping routes. The Zephyrians have scanned them multiple times but see only cargo manifests and civilian crews. This was the key to the human strategy. Other species fought the Zephyrians with traditional fleets, meeting their superior technology with brute force. Humans would fight differently. They would use deception, surprise, and unconventional tactics. On Harmony Point Station, Lisa Patterson was preparing for another day of pretending to negotiate. She had managed to stretch the talks into their 7th day by requesting detailed demographic studies of the colonies to be evacuated. The Zephyrian commander was clearly frustrated, but he was still playing along. "Commander Thexaler," she said as the morning session began, "our experts on Earth have raised some concerns about the environmental impact of rapid evacuation. Could we discuss establishing protected zones for endangered species?" The Zephyrians' 4 arms moved in what Lisa had learned was a gesture of extreme annoyance. "Ambassador, these delays are becoming absurd. We are not interested in your planetary wildlife." "I understand your position," Lisa replied, "but these are important considerations for our people. Could we perhaps establish a joint committee to study the issue?" While Lisa kept the Zephyrians distracted, Steve Clark was working on his most important mission yet. He had identified the main communication relay that connected the Zephyrian fleet to their command structure. If he could plant a virus in that system, it would cripple their ability to coordinate the attack. The virus was a masterpiece of human computer engineering. It would lie dormant until activated, then spread through the alien network, corrupting data and causing system failures. The Zephyrians would spend crucial hours trying to restore communications while human forces struck at their weakened fleet. "How long until you can deploy it?" Lisa asked during their lunch break. "Tonight," Steve replied. "I'll need access to their main computer core for about 10 minutes. Can you arrange a distraction?" Lisa thought for a moment. "Leave that to me." That evening, Lisa requested an emergency session with the Zephyrian delegation. She claimed that Earth had just discovered a previously unknown human settlement in one of the systems they were supposed to evacuate. "This changes everything," she told Dexaler. "We can't abandon these people. They've been living there for over 50 years. The Zephyrian commander was furious. "You should have disclosed this information from the beginning." "We only just discovered them," Lisa insisted. "Their communication systems were damaged in a solar storm. They've been cut off from the rest of human space." While Lisa led the entire Zephyrian delegation in heated discussions about the newly discovered settlement, Steve made his way to the station's computer core. Security was light because no one expected the humans to try anything so bold. The computer core was a massive chamber filled with processing units and data storage systems. Steve found the main connection to the Zephyrian network and carefully inserted his data chip. The virus began copying itself into the alien systems, hiding among routine maintenance programs. 10 minutes later, he was back in the conference room, listening to Lisa and Thexaler argue about evacuation procedures. For fictional colonists across human space, the final preparations for Operation Silent Thunder were complete. Frank Hayes stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a medical transport, but was actually a heavily armed assault ship. Around him, his best soldiers prepared for a mission that would either save humanity or doom them all. Target is the supply depot at Kepler Station, Frank told his team. Intelligence says they have fuel and ammunition for half the Zephyrian fleet stored there. We destroy that, and their ships become very expensive pieces of metal floating in space. Lieutenant Sarah Mills, Frank's second in command, checked her equipment one final time. "Sir, what if the depot is more heavily defended than intelligence believes?" "Then we adapt," Frank replied. "That's what humans do. We find a way to complete the mission no matter what we're facing." On Earth, General Patricia Brooks watched the tactical display as human forces moved into their final positions. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, but she had never imagined it would come against an enemy this powerful. "All units report ready," Colonel Thompson announced. Patricia took a deep breath. "Signal Admiral Morrison. Tell him the pieces are in place." High above Earth, Jack Morrison received the confirmation he had been waiting for. The human fleet was as ready as it would ever be. Now everything depended on timing, luck, and the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "Send the activation code to Colonel Hayes," Jack ordered. "Operation Silent Thunder is a go." The message flashed across space, reaching Frank's strike teams at their positions throughout Zephyrian territory. On 40 different ships, human soldiers prepared to attack targets they had been studying for weeks. Frank's assault on Kepler Station began with a simple docking request. "This is the medical transport Mercy," he radioed to the Zephyrian station. "We have injured personnel requesting emergency treatment." The Zephyrians, following their standard protocols, granted permission to dock. They had no reason to suspect that a human medical ship might be anything other than what it appeared to be. The moment Frank's ship was secured to the station, his soldiers moved. They knew exactly where to go and what to do. Within minutes, they had control of the depot's main computer systems and were placing explosive charges on the fuel storage tanks. Similar attacks were happening across Zephyrian space. Communication relays went dark. Supply ships disappeared. Command posts found themselves cut off from their fleets. The Zephyrians were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that struck from the shadows on the bridge of his flagship. Zephyrian Fleet Commander Velthara watched in growing alarm as reports poured in from across his territory. "How many attacks?" he demanded. 47 confirmed so far, sir," his communications officer replied. "We're losing contact with supply depots, relay stations, and forward bases." Velthara's forearms moved in complex patterns as he tried to process what was happening. No species had ever dared to attack Zephyrian territory directly. It went against every rule of galactic warfare. "Are these human attacks?" he asked. "We believe so, sir. The ship signatures match human civilian vessels, but they're armed and crewed by military personnel." The fleet commander stared at the tactical display. The humans were not fighting like any enemy the Zephyrians had faced before. Instead of massing their forces for a direct confrontation, they were striking at infrastructure and support systems. "Order all units to increase security at remaining depots," Velthara commanded, "and send a message to War Commander Thexaler. Tell him the negotiations are over. We attack human space immediately." But when his communications officer tried to send the message, he discovered that the main relay system was not responding. Steve Clark's virus had activated, spreading through the Zephyrian network like wildfire. Orders that should have taken seconds to transmit were now taking hours to get through. Back on Harmony Point, Lisa received an urgent message from Steve. "It's working," he whispered. "Their communication system is falling apart. They can't coordinate. Their fleet." Lisa felt a moment of hope, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians would recover eventually, and when they did, they would be angrier than ever. Thexaler burst into the conference room, his silver markings now flashing with rage. "The negotiations are terminated," he announced. "Your species has violated every principle of civilized warfare." Lisa stood up slowly, no longer pretending to be the frightened diplomat she had played for a week. "Commander, I'm not sure what you mean." "You know exactly what I mean," Thexaler replied. "Even as you spoke of peace, your military was attacking our installations." "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Lisa said calmly. "Perhaps we should discuss this like civilized beings," but Thexaler was already moving toward the door. "There will be no more discussion. Your species will pay for this treachery." As the Zephyrian delegation stormed out of the confer, Supreme War Commander Velthara had ruled the largest fleet in galactic history for over 30 years. He had conquered 12 star systems and brought 14 species under Zephyrian control. No enemy had ever successfully surprised him, and no enemy had ever escaped his revenge. The humans would learn what happened to those who dared to defy the Zephyrian Empire. "How many ships do we have in fighting condition?" he asked his fleet coordinator. 837 capital ships, sir," came the reply. "The human attacks damaged our supply lines, but we have enough fuel and ammunition for a complete assault on their home system." Velthara studied the tactical display. The humans had been clever, he admitted. Their surprise attacks had caused significant damage to Zephyrian infrastructure. But cleverness would not save them from the full power of the Empire's wrath. Set. Course for the Sol System, he ordered. Every ship. We will make an example of these humans that the galaxy will remember for 1,000 years. On Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the emergency session of the World Congress. Representatives from every nation and colony had gathered to hear what might be humanity's final address as an independent species. My fellow humans, she began, today we face the greatest challenge in our species' history. The largest military force ever assembled is moving toward our home system. They come not just to conquer us, but to destroy us completely. The Great Hall was silent. Everyone knew the odds. The Zephyrian fleet was 10 times larger than anything humanity could put in space. Their weapons were more advanced, their ships more powerful, their experience in galactic warfare unmatched. But I want you to remember something, President Carter continued. We are not the first species to face the Zephyrian Empire. We are simply the first to refuse to surrender without a fight. Her words were broadcast across human space, reaching every world, every station, every ship. On Luna Base, Admiral Morrison listened while he prepared for the battle that would determine humanity's future. On the outer colonies, families huddled together in underground shelters, hoping they would live to see another day. We may not be the strongest species in the galaxy, the president said, but we are the species that never learned when to quit. General Frank Hayes was leading his surviving strike teams back toward human space when the Zephyrian response began. His attack on the supply depot had been successful, but the cost had been higher than expected. Of the 47 teams that had participated in Operation Silent Thunder, only 23 were still operational. Sir, we're getting reports from the outer colonies, Lieutenant Sarah Mills reported from the co-pilot's seat. The Zephyrians are burning everything they can occupy. Frank looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was moving through human space like a storm, destroying everything in its path. New Boston was gone, its 2 million inhabitants killed in the opening hours of the attack. Terra Nova had fallen next, its cities reduced to radioactive craters. They're not trying to conquer us, Frank realized. They're trying to wipe us out completely. This was worse than anyone had imagined. The Zephyrians were not interested in ruling humanity or enslaving the survivors. They wanted to remove humans from the galaxy entirely, to serve as a warning to other species that might think of resisting Zephyrian authority. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Morrison watched the enemy fleet approach Earth, the Zephyrian. Ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging for the assault that would crack continents and boil oceans, but Morrison was not ready to give up. The human fleet was smaller and less advanced, but it had advantages the Zephyrians could not understand. Human crews were trained to think independently, to adapt to changing situations, to find solutions when everything seemed hopeless. Signal all ships, Morrison ordered. Implement the Fortress Protocol. We make our stand here. The Fortress Protocol was humanity's final defensive strategy. Instead of meeting the enemy in open space, human ships would use Earth's gravity well, its moon, and its orbital installations as cover. They would fight from defensive positions, using every asteroid, every space station, every piece of debris. As part of their fortifications, Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the carrier-used Defiance, the last of the great ships that had once protected human space. His vessel carried 200 fighters and 5,000 crew members, most of whom were volunteers who had refused evacuation orders. Sir, we're receiving transmission from the Zephyrian fleet, his communications officer reported. Put it through, Danny ordered, the main screen filled with the image of Supreme War Commander Velthara. The alien's 4 arms moved in patterns that conveyed absolute certainty of victory. Humans of the Sol System, the Zephyrian commander began. You have violated the natural order of the galaxy. You have attacked the servants of the Zephyrian Empire. You have refused to accept your proper place as subjects of superior beings. Danny felt his crew tense around him. Every human In the system was listening to these words. Your defiance ends now, Valthara continued. Your homeworld will be destroyed, your species will be extinct. This is the price of resistance. The transmission ended. Danny looked around at his crew, seeing the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Determination. The human refusal to accept defeat even when defeat seemed certain. All fighters, prepare for launch, he ordered. We may not win this battle, but we're sure as hell going to make them remember it. The battle for Earth began with a display of Zephyrian power that dwarfed anything in recorded history. Their weapons reached across space to strike at human defensive positions, turning orbital platforms into expanding clouds of debris, but the humans fought back with everything they had. The modified merchant ships that Roy Thompson had prepared revealed their hidden weapons, striking at Zephyrian vessels that thought they were attacking harmless cargo haulers. Space stations that appeared to be destroyed continued fighting with backup systems and emergency crews. General Patricia Brooks coordinated the defense from her command bunker, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The surface of Earth was already scarred by alien weapons, but humanity's command structure remained intact. Status report, she ordered. We've lost 40% of the orbital defenses, Colonel Thompson replied. But the enemy has taken heavier casualties than expected. They're not used to fighting an enemy that refuses to surrender. On the lunar surface, emergency shelters housed millions of civilians who had been evacuated from Earth. They watched through reinforced windows as the greatest battle in human history raged in the space above their heads. The fighting continued for 6 hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but they took Zephyrian vessels with them. Every human crew fought until their ship was destroyed, using ramming attacks and suicide runs when their weapons were exhausted. Admiral Morrison's flagship was hit by 3 separate alien weapons, but the ship continued fighting with half its systems destroyed. Damage report, he called out over the noise of emergency alarms. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer replied. We've lost main weapons, but secondary batteries are still functional. Then we keep fighting. Morrison said simply. Captain Rodriguez launched his fighters from the Defiance in waves, each squadron attacking a different part of the Zephyrian formation. The small human craft could not match alien ships in firepower, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Focus on their command ships, he ordered his pilots. Take out their coordination, and maybe we can turn this battle around. The human fighters swarmed through the Zephyrian formation like angry insects, too small and fast for the massive alien weapons to track effectively. Many were destroyed, but others got through, damaging communication arrays and targeting systems on the enemy capital ships. Supreme War Commander Valthara watched the battle from his command bridge with growing confusion. The humans should have been defeated within the first hour. Their ships were inferior, their weapons less powerful, their numbers pathetically small, yet they continued fighting with a ferocity that defied all military logic. Casualties? He demanded. We have lost 63 capital ships, sir, his tactical officer reported. The humans are using suicide attacks and coordinated swarm tactics. Our weapons are designed for long-range combat against similar vessels, not close-range fighting with smaller craft. Valthara Ace Arms moved in patterns of frustration. In 3 centuries of conquest, no enemy had ever forced the Zephyrian Empire to take such losses in a single battle. The humans were supposed to be a minor species, easily crushed by superior firepower, but as the battle continued, something unexpected began to happen. Other alien species throughout the galaxy were watching the fight through long-range sensors and communication intercepts. They saw the massive Zephyrian fleet being held off by a much smaller human force. For the first time in galactic history, someone was making the Zephyrian Empire bleed. On a distant world at the edge of known space, the Altarian Council received reports of the battle. The Altarians had surrendered to the Zephyrians without firing a shot 50 years earlier. Now they watched in amazement as humans fought against impossible odds. They're actually hurting them, Council Leader Zeftai whispered. The humans are making the Zephyrians pay for every kilometer of space. Similar scenes The truth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of humanity's revelation broadcast, every major species had received the classified information about the Darkness War. The carefully constructed image of Zephyrian invincibility was crumbling, and with it, the foundation of their empire. On Earth, the battle still raged through the burning cities. General Patricia Brooks coordinated the final defense from her command bunker as Zephyrian troops fought their way through human resistance. Above the planet, Supreme War Commander Velthara watched his perfect conquest turn into a nightmare. "Sir, we're receiving communications from 17 different species," his communications officer reported. "They're all demanding explanations about the Darkness War." Velthara's forearms moved in patterns of deep frustration. The humans had done something no enemy had ever managed before. They had turned his own empire against him by revealing the truth his species had tried so hard to hide. The Altarian Council was the first to break. Council leader Zeftai sent a message directly to the Zephyrian fleet. "We withdraw our support from your empire. If you are fighting a war against an ancient enemy, then we demand to be treated as allies, not slaves." Similar messages began arriving from across Zephyrian space. The Kethmori Collective, the Verdant Federation, the Silicon Republic, all of them species that had surrendered to Zephyrian power years or decades earlier. Now they knew their conquerors had been driven by fear rather than strength. On the surface of Earth, Captain Julie Foster was leading a small team of scientists in what appeared to be a suicide mission. While soldiers fought and died around them, Julie's group was working to complete humanity's final gift to the galaxy. "How much longer?" she asked Dr. Ben Carter, her chief researcher. "Another hour, maybe two," Ben replied, his hands flying over the portable computer. "If the data we gathered from the Zephyrian systems is correct, their ancient enemy has a specific weakness, something about their technology that makes them vulnerable to certain types of interference." Julie had spent her career studying alien biology and technology. When the war began, she had been working on a research project that seemed unimportant at the time. Now that research might be the key to saving not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy. The humans had discovered something the Zephyrians had missed in 3 centuries of preparation. The ancient enemy that was hunting down advanced civilizations had a fatal flaw in their technology. Human scientists, with their different way of thinking, had spotted the weakness that even the mighty Zephyrian Empire had overlooked. "There," Ben said finally, "I've got it. The solution to their shielding technology. If we can broadcast this information, every species in the galaxy will have a way to fight back against the darkness." Julie felt a moment of hope. Humanity might die today, but they could still save everyone else. She activated her emergency transmitter and began uploading Ben's research to every communication satellite still functioning around Earth. High above the planet, War Commander Thexaler was trying to make sense of the chaos engulfing his fleet. He had returned from the failed negotiations expecting to oversee the simple destruction of human civilization. Instead, he found himself dealing with the collapse of galactic order. "Sir, the humans are broadcasting again," his communications officer announced. This time it's technical data about the darkness enemy. They claim to have found a weakness in their defenses. Thexaler studied the information flowing across his screens. The human research was crude by Zephyrian standards, but it showed a level of creative thinking that impressed him despite himself. Where Zephyrian scientists had tried to match the ancient enemy's technology with superior firepower, the humans had looked for flaws and vulnerabilities. "Is this information accurate?" he asked his science officer. "Preliminary analysis suggests it might be, sir. The humans have approached the problem from a completely different angle than our researchers." For the first time since the battle began, Thexaler felt something other than anger toward the humans. They had fought with courage against impossible odds. They had revealed uncomfortable truths about the Empire. And now they were offering solutions to problems the Zephyrians had been unable to solve on Earth's surface. The fighting was reaching its final stages. Human resistance was crumbling as superior alien technology and numbers took their toll. But the defenders continued to fight, buying time for their scientists to complete their work. General Brooks received a message that changed everything. "Ma'am, we're getting a communication from the Zephyrian fleet. They're requesting a ceasefire." Brooks stared at her communications officer in disbelief. "A ceasefire? Now?" "Yes, ma'am. War Commander Thexaler is asking to speak directly with our leadership." Brooks contacted President Carter in her emergency bunker. The two women had been expecting death or capture within hours. The possibility of negotiations seemed impossible. "Put him through," the president said finally. The main screen filled with the image of Thexaler. The Zephyrian commander looked different from the arrogant alien who had dismissed human concerns just days earlier. His markings showed respect, an emotion humans had never seen from his species. "President Carter," he began, "I request immediate cessation of hostilities." "Commander," Carter replied carefully, "your forces are in the process of destroying my homeworld. Why would you want to stop now?" Thexaler's arms moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of acknowledgement. "Because your species has taught us something we did not expect to learn. You have shown us that strength is not always measured in weapons or ships." The president remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Your revelation about the Darkness War has caused difficulties for our empire," Thexaler admitted. "Our subject species are demanding explanations. Some are refusing to follow orders. The foundation of our power is cracking." "And?" Carter prompted. "Your scientists have provided information that could be crucial to our survival against the ancient enemy. The research you broadcast shows a level of creative thinking our people have not achieved." Carter felt a glimmer of hope. "What are you proposing, Commander?" "Partnership," Thexaler said simply. "Your species fights with honor and thinks with creativity. Our species has technology and resources. Together we might survive what is coming. Apart, we will all face extinction." The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything both species believed about galactic politics. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and superior force. Now they were offering equality to a species they had tried to destroy just hours earlier. President Carter looked at General Brooks, seeing the same thoughts reflected in her eyes. This could be a trap, a way for the Zephyrians to buy time while they prepared a new attack. But it could also be something unprecedented in galactic history, a genuine offer of alliance between equals. "If we agree to this partnership," Carter said carefully, "what happens to the species you already control?" "They will be offered the same choice," Thexaler replied. "The old empire is ending whether we want it to or not. Your revelation has made that inevitable. We can either adapt to a new reality or face destruction when the darkness arrives." Dr. Julie Foster was listening to the conversation from her research station in the ruins of Geneva. She thought about the data she had uncovered, the weakness in the ancient enemy's technology that no one else had spotted. Humanity had always been good at finding solutions where others saw only problems. "Commander," she interrupted, "if we're going to be partners, we need to know everything about this ancient enemy. No more secrets, no more hidden information." Thexaler looked surprised that a human scientist would speak directly to him, but he nodded. "Agreed. Our survival depends on sharing everything we know." The ceasefire took effect within hours. Zephyrian troops stopped their advance and began withdrawing to predetermined positions. Human defenders emerged from their shelters and bunkers, hardly believing that they had survived the encounter with the galaxy's most powerful military force. Admiral Morrison had died in the battle, but his sacrifice had inspired a resistance that changed galactic history. Colonel Hayes and his surviving commandos were already working with Zephyrian engineers to plan joint operations against the ancient threat. Ambassador Patterson returned from Harmony Point to help negotiate the new alliance. The transformation was not easy. 3 centuries of Zephyrian dominance could not be erased overnight. Many species remained suspicious of their former oppressors. Some refused to believe that the mighty empire was genuinely offering partnership rather than a new form of control, but the human example had shown that resistance was possible. More importantly, human creativity had provided solutions that might actually work against the approaching darkness. Species across the galaxy began to see hope where they had once seen only certain doom. General Brooks stood in her command center, watching as former enemies worked together to prepare for the real war that was coming. The ancient enemy was still out there, hunting down advanced civilizations with relentless efficiency. But now the galaxy was ready to fight back. "Ma'am," Colonel Thompson said, "we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. The first joint human Zephyrian patrol encountered one of the ancient ships." "And?" Brooks asked. Thompson smiled. "They destroy